Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome to this video. I really want to sit down and talk about Honkai Star Rail with their latest devlog or development radio or developer radio, excuse me, because I really thought this was really interesting to see. But at the same time, a lot of people seem to be very overly praising it. Praiseful, is that the word for it? Anyway, there's a lot of gassing up going on here, and I do want to give my 2 cents on the fixes that they're going after here. Basically, in this development radio, they address that the problem here is the storytelling, right? And after reading through all this, what I gathered here is that I feel like they're just putting a skip button on most of these parts of the story. When I feel like that the issue with the storytelling, and not only in Star but also in Genshin, and even to some degree in Zenless Zone. But Star Rail's story is very, very, very talky, right? They like to really go over like the lore of this world, or the cultures, and this and that. Oh yeah, the end times, these titans. I feel like they should talk about the titans, right? But the Chrysal heirs and miracles, blah blah blah, right? Basically a lot of the stuff that doesn't contribute to the overall problem or plot point of the story. The problem that they're trying to solve here in each of these stories. So a lot of that gets very, very tedious to go through, and that seems to be a huge issue. No, it is a huge issue for the players going through these stories, because these stories themselves are fine and in fact very interesting if you are able to digest it all, but trying to do so is such a tough experience because of how much dialogue you have to get through just to know about this main issue or this next plot point or whatever. And another issue I do have is not only the storytelling, of course, is the visuals, right? It's like basically, like I said, the story of itself is fine. It's almost like taking a really good dish, like let's just say steak, for example, right? Or like a cake. You can have the best ingredients in the world, which is the story of itself. But if you don't present them in a very exciting manner, then you're not gonna stick out well, or they're gonna have a little bit of a hard time to take it down, right? Eat it and consume it and swallow it, right? Um, Somebody made compared it to like a scone, which is like by itself is a little hard to eat because it's so dry and stuff like that. So what you need is something like coffee or jam or cream or something like that. It's just that extra pizzazz that that it really adds to the dish, right? And that pizzazz, of course, in this case here in Star Rail, is the camera angles, the expressions in the faces, the movement, right? The poses that they should have in these parts of the storytelling, because a lot of times it's very monotonous. It's just very much the same old thing. The same rhythm, the same slog, right? It's almost like eating the same thing over and over again, I guess, but in a different I guess setting, if that makes sense. There has been this sort of similar issue with Genshin, of course. Genshin is also very infamous for that as well, especially when Paimon is like basically repeating the same shit to the traveler. It's like, yes, we understand that, Paimon. Like, yeah. You don't need to freaking repeat it pretty much in your wording to us. But I guess I believe what they have been doing as of late is kind of like spicing up the visuals a little bit, because they've been like adding different poses to the lantern, right? At least, especially with Hu Tao, with the very cute double peace sign V pose, right? When she got into the new outfit, and then when she, like was hugging Xiangling with her new outfit and everything, and the hand holding, and it's like there's actual freaking interaction here instead of just like standing in that same pose, the same thinking pose, the the same hand gestures and everything. They're trying to spice it up by having these new poses and the images and stuff like that. And speaking of images, there was one part of the Amphor's chapter, the Amphor's story chapter, where you see a Gladys face with that finger pointing pose with the thread and everything for a very long time. It felt like, you know, the art itself is fine, but that's the only thing that you get to see in that in the straight 5 minutes or 7 minutes of whatever dialogue she was trying to get across. It's like yes, um she's basically trying to rate on us and everything, like, oh, are you telling the truth, blah blah blah, or all that stuff. um all that in that same image. It's like, you could have at least changed it up a little bit by having different bits of artwork to throw in there to make it a little more presentable, right? You know, presentation is very much as the main dish of itself. You know, it really helps complete the dish. And some people may say, oh, presentation is not important, the graphics is not important, the visuals aren't important. It's just the flavor. It's the main, eating that matters at the end of the day. I mean, to each their own, I guess, but a lot of people just don't realize that those things are also important. The visuals, the flashiness is very important. A lot of times when I sit through something like a Yakuza story, that one's a lot more interesting because the dialogue, they don't really like, beat around the bush. They get to the point a lot of times, and like the expressions and then the animation, stuff like that, the camera angles and everything. That one actually feels like watching a very dynamic movie in a sense, in comparison to these Hoyo games, man. And especially with Star Rail, my God, there's a lot of stuff to go through in Amphorus. Um, and also not only that, but the one of the parts of Penacony, that was super long, but the payoff was admittedly cool, or pretty cool. But man, getting there could have been a lot better, I felt like. So at least they are aware of the issue. That's one thing to take away from, but the way they're going about it is something I do not agree with. And hopefully, when the actual action takes place, maybe we see something a little different. But right now, they're just adding a skip button to a lot of these things, which isn't really doing a whole lot, in my opinion. I mean, having options to skip is fine, but I feel like what they're doing is that infomercial with the guy slapping that whatever that thing is, like, not a band-aid, but you know what I mean, like that, the sticky stuff onto the wall with a hole, to stop the water. I feel like that's all what they're doing, when you should just taking care of the wall of itself, right? Fill in the actual hole, and then maybe put the band-aid over to prevent any more leaks, right? I think that's what's kind of happening here in a hypothetical sense, or an analogy, right? You know, oh, instead of going through these three different options, you can just skip through it, when they should have made these methods interesting to look at, right? They make a lot of money, right? Hoyo makes a lot of money, and yet they don't put enough effort, it seems like, in a lot of these things. They do, yeah. I mean, obviously they do put effort into the character designs and all that stuff, but when it comes to the story, it could be a lot better, and I think they need to address these things in a more direct fashion, instead of like just, oh, skip button this, skip button that, right? That's that's kind of what it feels like. And if we go over here, this addresses this talks about the puzzles as if they are a problem, when I feel like, in my opinion, the biggest issue is the story. So because of the slog that we have right now with the story, it makes like if it makes people feel like these puzzles are an issue when again the story is the real big elephant in the room. Now maybe there are some parts of the puzzle that could be improved upon, and maybe that's what they're trying to go after. But it seems like what it sounds like here is that they're just trying to make these puzzles just stupid easy or stupid simple just for you to get to the story and make it feel like, oh, they're helping, they're solving issues, they care about us, you know. I'm all for puzzles as long as they're intriguing or intuitive and stuff like that, you know. But having to skip the puzzles altogether, like, I don't know, again, it's just this whole skip button thing. It's just putting a band-aid on over the wound kind of thing. Drawn out puzzles and stuff like that. I mean, um, it only feels drawn out because we took so long to get to these puzzles. It feels like. So that's kind of like my two cents on that, or my honest feelings on that. But maybe there could be some fat to trim out with the puzzles. But and the same thing here with the battles, right? Um, I'm all for battles in these stories or whatever, as long as they're interesting to do, you know, because otherwise, okay, if we take away the battles, if you take away the puzzles and stuff like that, then that means you theoretically would get the same exact experience just watching YouTube and stuff like that. So it's like it really gives less incentive to play these yourselves when you can just like sit back and just watch a YouTube videos. If you just YouTube your way through these stories, it really doesn't change things up other than the fact that, you know, you're not building currency and pulling for these characters. But in terms of the storytelling experience, those two ways aren't too far off from each other. Again, that's just my honest 2 cents on that. Right here, this addresses, or they're just saying like, oh, we're continuing to polish and stuff like that. But here, this is potentially really good, right? Because this talks about the big issue also in the room, especially with Star Rail, which is the power creeping. Power creeping has been a very common thing across gacha games, right? And this is definitely no exception, along with something like with Genshin. And we've been asking for fixes on certain characters for a very long time in Genshin alone, but they're just dancing around the bush or whatever. They're beating around the bush. Um, and kind of the same thing felt like here, but at least now with this, it doesn't feel that way, hopefully. Um, so they're basically going to address the difficulty in deploying older characters on the battlefield, quote unquote, and the strengthening of these older characters are already on schedule. So pretty cool with that alone, but I just wish to know how they're going to do it. You know, they could have at least used Zele or Seele, but I say Zele. Zele, I hope to see as an example, right? Zele would be getting these things in her kit and stuff like that as a way for us to understand how they're approaching this, right? Instead of just saying, oh, we're gonna buff older characters, right? But maybe they're saving that for that big surprise in the next live stream or whatever, you know. I guess that's my theory on, or that's my guess on that. But um, it is good to see. I just hope they just buff their actual kits instead of locking these buffs behind something like um oh, the artifacts, oh, the weapons, oh, um the eidolons or eidolons, right? That would be stupid because that's accentuating the problem, because power creeping, what problems come out of it is a waste of money. It's you know, the it creates less reason or less incentive to invest your money into these characters less and less, because each major patch, there's always a new meta. They always on purpose create a new meta to give reasons to have these new characters that are coming up, right? We've had of course Zele, right? But then she just gets super power crept. Um Along with Jing Yuan, of course, by characters like Jing Liu. And then of course we had the Acheron thing that was going on. And then of course the Super Break meta, right? Um Along with the follow-up meta, I guess, at some point. But the Super Break meta was the big one, right? Especially with when Firefly came out, especially with Yuan Mei, very very powerful character, even up to this point, you know. Um, but then you have characters like Silverwolf, who just became super irrelevant. Such a stark contrast in comparison to how she was built up to be, right? And what her initial kit was. It's like, yeah, her adding a weakness to a monster. Wow, like that's like, and at the time, mind blowing, right? But then you have a lot of the new characters with these like their own weakness additions, right? They can add their own weakness to the enemy, like Firefly, for example. That's huge. That is a huge power creep right there, or whatever, right? Like, it just gives way less incentive to use Silverwolf then, especially when she kind of like randomizes the weaknesses depending on what your team is like, and it um just these couple of barriers, right? And then she can only add weakness to one enemy at a time or whatever. You have to take up a turn just to add a weakness and stuff like that, when all these other characters nowadays put their element onto that monster and attack all in one turn, right? So it um really outdated Silverwolf's kit and gave way less incentive to use her over the newer characters, which is why, for someone who is very popular and very much gassed up to be a very like powerful unit at the time, her drop off was just so apparent. It was so big, right? Um, that's just what I think happened with Silverwolf anyway, as an example. Obviously, there's some characters that also got left behind, but not as bad, I would say, with Silverwolf. And especially once a character like Ron May came out, it's like, okay, so you kind of want to have the Ron May, a support, right, a buffing support, and then you have the sustain, right, whether they heal or add shields, and then you kind of just want to have I don't know, a DPS character, of course, and then maybe another DPS character, or so on and so forth, whatever composition you want, right? You have the hyper carry or whatever you wanted. A huge example, right? You have the Ron May, Gallagher, and then you have Firefly, and then you have Harmony, Trailblazer, right? That was the team that ran for a very long time. And then someone like Lingsha took Gallagher's place, which is like a little more straightforward, yeah, because it's 4-star to a 5-star. That's obvious. And then I picked up Fugue, which replaced Trailblazer MC, or excuse me, Harmony MC, excuse me, which of course is another given because, yeah, free, the MC character replaced by a 5-star character, another given. But the point is that these characters, right, have way more reason to be on the team for you to use over trying to build a team with Silverwolf, for example. So hopefully Silverwolf's kit will be updated. Maybe she can actually like, add weaknesses in a blast radius, right? That'd be pretty cool, potentially. Or do something else with it. I'm not sure. So that way it's like, yeah, it's still keeping her overall sort of kit and you still kind of do the same things with Silverwolf, but it just keeps it a little more reasonable, right? For her to be on your team. So hopefully, point being, they do these things right. You know, that is one thing we need to wait and see. You know, especially with the story stuff, how they're going to do it, and then the puzzles, right? How they're going to do that. There's still a lot of questions to be asked. But all they really did, for the most part, is admit to the fact that yes, the story is an issue. Maybe the puzzles are also an issue, but um, what was it? There was oh yeah, too often, interrupting the flow of the story. Um, it's kind of funny of how they kind of like made it. They admitted to the fact that these puzzles or whatever, right? But also the story is also very excessive, creates fatigue, tedium, all that stuff. What do you guys think? Did you find the storytelling to be an issue, those puzzle solving to be an issue? And what about the power creeping stuff? How do you guys feel about that? Now that it's made known that they know. We know that they know that we know, right? Basically, it's what's going on here, at least for now. Um, do you feel like the skip button is a good thing? I mean, having options is always good, of course, but I think that's not the only thing they should do, of course. It's the writing. But any of those comments relating to this video, leave down below. Love to read them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps out, and I do appreciate it. So this has been my 2 cents on Star Rail and their latest developer radio thing for Amphorus. So Amphorus is interesting. The story of itself is fine. It's how they're presenting it is the big issue here. So thank you very much, and hope to see you all in the next video. Ciao now.